Ezekiel Elliott, who I also have in the league, some very important news, did everything today.
Everything.
So certainly in practice. So according to Mike McCarthy, full participant, which would seem to put him on track to play in Sunday's game against the Packers. There is going to be a lot of, I'm sure, interest in what the division of labor is between Zeke and Tony Pollard. To hear Jerry Jones, who is Ezekiel Elliott's biggest fan, tell it, it's still going to be Zeke's show. They like Tony Pollard in the more limited role, so to speak, that they've carved out for him here. Yeah. And, I would say this. There's not a lot of running backs who are true bell cows in the NFL. So the idea that Tony Pollard is ever going to be a 25 carry a game guy in the long term, in the macro, it's probably unlikely that's going to happen.
Right.
So the question is, from a snap perspective, from a touch perspective, are you more even now between Zeke and Pollard as Zeke is coming off of an injury? Again, Jerry, and the buck stops with Jerry on everything, continues to say it's going to be Zeke. That he's the guy that this offense revolves around, even though we've seen the explosiveness of Tony Pollard. But that'll be one of the many storylines to keep an eye on in Sunday's game. Of course, Mike McCarthy going back to Green Bay the first time since they fired him unceremoniously after a loss. The Packers have their own injury issues. Eric Stokes, he was their first-round pick last year, I believe, out of Georgia, defensive back. He had the injury last week. Does not sound like he's going to play again this season. So that's another thing that the Packers have to deal with. That they also just lost Rashawn Gary. Yeah. Aaron Jones got beat up in that game, and I believe was in a walking boot after the game. It sounds like he dodged a bullet and actually should be okay to play in this game. It's just you have to feel for Matt LaFleur at this point with the number of things that are going on here. Whatever chance they had to gather rhythm with this new wide receiver group has been thwarted by Sammy Watkins getting hurt, which at this point should not be a huge surprise to anyone because that's been the story of his career. But Christian Watson has not been able to stay on the field. He got pulled last week for concussion protocol, didn't have a concussion, but he had one the previous week, and that was his first game back after missing however many weeks it was with a hamstring injury.
Right.
So, Randall Cobb is on the team for one reason, which is that him and Aaron are close, and Aaron said, I want him on the team. But he's not a vertical stretch player anymore. He's not beating people downfield. He's going to do some dirty work inside. And Romeo Doubs is also out. So at this point, what do? You've also had offensive line issues. David Bakhtiari's been in and out of the lineup. Him and Elton Jenkins both have told the Packers like hours before the game, hey, I actually can't play when they practice the whole week, assuming those guys are going to be in there. It's just it's a hard situation if you're the head coach, if you're anybody on that coaching staff right now, when you have that many parts going in and out, and when you're trying to stem the tide. I mean, this would be a great one. All right, if the Packers can beat the Cowboys in Green Bay, it will suddenly feel like, okay, this is where Aaron Rodgers makes the run. This is where they figure it out. Now, it could be a 9-6 game, and then maybe nobody's saying this. But the point is, this could be that type of a launching pad game. And I would bet you, knowing how Aaron Rodgers thinks about these things, knowing how his personality is, he's delivering that message in one way or another, that we've got the opportunity right now to turn this thing around. But it's got to start now. Because if you lose this game, that is their 7th loss, I believe. 6th or 7th loss.
Six in a row, 7th overall.
They'd be 3-7.
Yeah.
It would be 3-7. And you would need to run the table for the rest of the year, which nothing about the Packers so far this season has given you the indication that type of a run is coming. Dallas, on the other hand, has been fairly healthy through the course of the season. Obviously, but for Dak Prescott missing a chunk of games with his injury. But they survived it.
Yeah.
Cooper Rush stayed out there.
Well, we started with Tyron Smith.
And Tyron Smith, that's true.
But
add him up, TJ. Give me all the excuses.
Well, it's not even an excuse. I'm not even pleasantly surprised. I'm just like, when we start the season, everyone talked about how Tyron being out was going to destroy the Cowboys. I had to keep mentioning that for as great as he is, how many games has he missed over the last 3 seasons, Tom? It was a considerable amount.
For Tyron Smith, he's missed about double the number of games he's actually played in.
Exactly. So we've been used to playing without him. I feel the line is doing a great job, and that was one of my biggest worries, and I'm pretty happy about
Settle down just a little bit.
I don't even think that was didn't I talk to you about these drops? I specifically talked to you about the drops this morning, man. And then you put a drop in there that was not necessary.
I feel warranted.
Cowboys have dodged a lot of bullets. Let's put it that way. Valid point on Tyron Smith, who might make it back, too.
Yeah.
He could be a month or so away from potentially being back in the lineup, which would be a big boost.
You know what that equals, Tom? Championship.
You're feeling it right now, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I look, I'm the one who
as a Cowboys fan.
I'm really, you're going to lose this weekend.
Yeah,
right?
I'm really worried
if they
about
lose
this.
on Sunday, how are you going to feel? Is this going to be fully down?
No.
It's over? Or is it just going to be we never win in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you think about some rivalries, Steelers-Ravens, for example, it doesn't matter what the record is. You know you're going to get a great competitive game with those two. I just feel like in this rivalry, Aaron Rodgers has owned us, and until we go in there and stomp a mud hole in him, I'm not going to feel great about it. I'm going to be nervous.
Stomp a mud hole in him?
Stomp a mud hole in him and walk it dry.
Is that a Jerryism?
Well, that's a Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay.
And that's the bottom line. Because Stone Cold said so. Don't.
All right. You rely on me for fantasy advice. I'll rely on you for WWE references.
I'm your guy here, Tom.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.